I might be a broken record. I might sound like a broken record. I might, at this point, probably be something that you can just copy and paste to future shows because the Pirates play, the Pirates lose, and this one at least is an interleague loss, but the Pirates lose here. And nonetheless, this is another edition of the Pirates postgame show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. So the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh postgame here on PSL. I, of course, am your host, Mike Asti, who continues to trek towards what maybe is the end of this reduced season or whenever it ends up ending, because the Pirates seemingly have already checked out of contention here to this point. They lose this one 7-3 to the Minnesota Twins. The Pirates, once again, trying to make it interesting towards the end, but nothing doing. And I also want to, I guess, give a little apology for the lack of programming on Sunday, the lack of a post-game show, but the Pirates tied in the ninth, the fact that it was a weather delay in a game that ended up not ending for another hour or so, despite runners now being put on second base, and a personal celebration of mine. I will admit I didn't feel the Pirates were worthy. So they were not, and we now get to another day and another Pirates post-game show, but another loss for Pittsburgh, who once again disappoints. My guest for this one is a actual college radio WVU colleague of mine. He also does play-by-play and radio work. He's also a radio host in West Virginia, and in his play-by-play work is a former play-by-play man for the Augusta Green Jackets. As I had to bring him on there. I thought I could unmute you, but I guess you had to do it yourself. This apparently had to ask you to unmute yourself. So I'm glad that you did that to join me here on the Pirates edition of the postgame show here on PSL. Eric Little. Eric, thanks for joining me, man. And I apologize also to you for making you watch what was 3.5, almost 4 hours of baseball prior to the weather delay. I don't know if you watched after we decided not to do the show here and I canceled it. And then 3+ hours again of Pirates baseball again today. I mean, that's rough sledding, but thank you.
No, that's okay. I was already watching Sunday's game and I had plans to watch this afternoon as well, but this is a tough team to watch right now. The top of the order is not hitting. I had a friend ask me, it seems like the Pirates are scuffling. Is it the pitching? Is it the bullpen? Is it the hitting? And I just said yes. I just said yes, because you look at today, you really needed Joe Musgrove to deliver a good start, and it didn't happen. And when the starting pitching's been there, the bullpen's not been there. When the hitting's been there, it's been either all early in the game or all late in the game. This is a team that just can't put 9 innings together at this time. They've lost 6 straight. And this one stings because it comes after 2 walk-off losses, and it comes at the end of a 5-game road trip that's all the Bucks go over. So there are no good losses, but after 2 bad ones, this one stings.
Yeah, to say the least, the Pirates again lose another one. And I guess this one, unlike some of the earlier losses prior to the season, as you mentioned, or earlier in the year, this one really wasn't close. This one was a game that it was pretty clear that they weren't going to win this from the jump. And you look at the comparisons of these two teams too. You mentioned the Pirates' main guys just mightily struggling, and it's been a focus of every one of these. Just the guys that you need to hit, they're just not. Bell, who does get one today, but it doesn't do much for the batting average. Or Reynolds gets one today, doesn't do much for the batting average. Bell, Frazier, Polanco, all still struggling, all throwing up goose eggs out there. And then you look like a team like the Twins with Nelson Cruz as DH. The Pirates don't really have a legitimate DH, a major problem we're seeing so far this season. But I do want to start off with a focus on Musgrove, because funny enough, almost every single time I end up here in the rotation to do this post-game show for the Pirates, it's been on a Musgrove start. So 3 out of 4 for me has been a Musgrove start. And I will tell you, we do a 3 up, 3 down segment. We'll get to it here later in the broadcast here. Again, joined by Eric Little here. I'm Mike Asti on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And Musgrove has actually been an up in his prior 2 starts, because even though he didn't win and actually lost those games, he pitched relatively well. He gave up 3 runs in one, 4 in the other. And this is not a guy that you normally would expect to be your ace of your rotation. He's forced into that role because of injuries and different issues. if you have him as a number 3 or 4 starter and you get 3-4 runs allowed from him and 8 strikeouts, you're going to be very, very happy with the performance. It's hard to like that for your ace, but they don't really have an ace. Today, though, 5 earned runs. So that now is getting into a neighborhood which is now not able to be something you can handle, especially from a guy who is number 1 on your staff, like it or not. What do you make for Musgrove? He's been okay. He's been pitched well enough to win. He's had borderline quality starts, even though not yet there, but he is seemingly regressing. If he continues to regress, is this just going to be a disaster? Because how much does this team need him to pitch well?
I think this is kind of trending in the way that a lot of his seasons trend. He'll look good at the beginning and he'll have good starts at the beginning, but then we'll see some starts from him where it seems like he's pressing. He'll work through 4 or 5 innings, but give up 5 or 6 runs, and they'll not be in one big inning where the dam burst or something like that. It'll be a run here, a run there. The damage control wasn't awful for Musgrove today, but especially in that first inning, he really got himself into trouble with some walks. A 33 pitch first inning doesn't set the tone well on a day where, for the second straight day, you really needed a starting pitcher to go deep into the ball game to help save a bullpen that was already chewed up a little bit. Hard to believe with a 30-man roster, you're getting into situations where the bullpen's chewed up, but that's kind of where we are right now with this club, because the starters just haven't been able to get deep into games. So if this is a micro the 60-game season is a micro version of your 162-game season. Maybe we're getting into that version of Musgrove. But a guy like Musgrove, a guy like Trevor Williams, that are solid rotation pieces, and I lump them together because I see a lot of similarities in the results that we get. These are solid rotation guys, but sometimes when they're asked to shoulder the load for this rotation, or they at least take on that burden, we see them struggle under the weight of carrying a rotation and feeling like they've got to carry a rotation. I think it's going to be good for this team down, or as the season plays out, to have somebody like Derek Holland in that clubhouse, in that dugout, talking those guys up. Maybe they can rub off on him a little bit for, when do you shoulder responsibility? When do you just worry about yourself and go pitch? But right now, for whatever reason, Musgrove didn't have it today. His command was off all game. I thought he never quite got into a groove. He wanted to point at the music, whatever. It was obnoxious today. I noticed it more today. I don't think I noticed it last night, but for whatever reason, excuses are excuses. He just didn't have it today, and they need him to have it more often than not.
No, he did not have it, and the Musgrove line reads as follows: 3 1/4. So bad, not getting to at least. He's got at least over 4 innings, both of his prior 2 starts, even 5, almost a quality start, 5 1/4 in that first one on the opening day of sorts for the Pirates. Only 3 1/4, 5 earned runs, 6 hits, 5 walks, only 2 strikeouts, which is a major difference. He was striking out a lot of batters against some good teams in his first 2 starts. So not seeing the command, not getting the strikeouts. His ERA now 6.75, and this is now several starts in. So it's not like it's just crazy math when you see these ERAs after only facing a few batters. This is now his legit ERA, 6.75, which is now an unacceptable ERA regardless of where you are in a rotation. But he unfortunately is going to be heavily relied on. Same thing with Trevor Williams, as you mentioned, because they don't have Archer. And even if Archer's not nearly what he was in Tampa Bay, and he has been a disappointment since coming to Pittsburgh, having him this year would have at least rounded out this rotation. You'd at least expect this or better from him in terms of starts. He at least has the ability to get further into games and throw a lot of pitches. Not something you're able to see from Trevor Williams, not something you're able to really see from Musgrove. These are guys that if they get through 5 innings, it's a great day. And now they're struggling to even get there. Eric Little here. You've had some play-by-play work in your day. You were a former play-by-play man for the Augusta Green Jackets there in minor league baseball. You also do some radio work in West Virginia. You're a colleague of mine, and I actually joke that it was the college radio curse of West Virginia college radio station that allowed us to not have this happen on Sunday evening because of the weather delay. Because no matter how the Pirates have been, we got every other one of these in. But the first other U92 alum that I had on, it didn't work out. But nonetheless, happy to have Eric with me here. And if any of you do have any comments, positive or negative, and of course, I can't imagine we can put much of a lipstick on this pig right now from the Pirates game here today, but feel free to throw them into our chat there on the Pittsburgh Sports Live YouTube channel or hit me on Twitter at Mike Asti 11. The line here today for the team, 3 runs, 9 hits, 2 errors, which again, they've had an error in most of these games of this season, but now 2 in a game for a team that actually was thinking defense could be something they could hang their hat on. Defensively, this team coming into the season was figuring to be good, and that could be something to help these pitchers who struggle to get far into games. Now they're struggling defensively. Now they're making errors. The Twins, 7 runs, 8 hits, 0 errors for them. But the Pirates actually out hitting Minnesota despite only the 3 runs, which no homers today, but it does go into a lot more extra base hits for Minnesota. Now, Eric, before we get to any questions, if we do have them, and we get to that famous 3 up, 3 down segment that's tons of fun, and I, as a host of the Pirates postgame show here in PSL, I do give myself the task of trying to come up with something different every one of these shows, but that is tough sledding, as you could imagine. Bell, Reynolds, Frazier, and Polanco. It's been a shorter season for Polanco, even with the reduced schedule, but he has really been struggling to the point that Polanco right now is hitting the impressive .63. That is his batting average, and yes, it is less games than the others, but still, you're looking at Adam Frazier at 175, 1 for 4 today. Bell 0 for 5, 171. That's 2 strikeouts. He's been striking out at least twice in most of these games. Had 3 Ks the other day prior to Sunday. Moran now 0 for 4. He was the only guy hitting, the only one hitting for power. And I joked on Twitter the other day, he's giving you that Mark McGwire 98 season where it's feast or famine, it's home run or strikeout, and he's now not getting on. Reynolds 1 for 3. 1 hit, though, brings him to 147 for a batting average. And then the rest of the lineup you can't really expect too much more from. But even though this team's struggling, even though you didn't expect much immaterial to COVID, and maybe you expect less now, you do have some respectability of trying to win these games. Derek Shelton's going to try to win these games. He's not just going to throw the white flag before they even throw the first pitch. So how bad does it have to be, or is it already bad enough to have to tinker with this lineup in terms of not just throwing in Asuna every now and then? I'm talking about maybe sitting some of these prohibited starters or taking Reynolds out of the 5 spot. You don't want to expect the season he had last year. You can't reasonably expect that for somebody in his sophomore season. But I feel like you can't just let him putter away here with 100 or less batting averages in the leadoff spot, 3, 4, 5, and then even a critical 6. You got to move it around, I'd imagine, at some point here.
Well, I know Derek Shelton has started 11 different lineups in his 11 games as Pirate manager. So he's clearly still not decided on where he wants to put people. And you don't know if that's just something that is a Derek Shelton thing where he tries to move people around. He's got a bigger roster to work with. So remember, he's got more bench bats to work in. And guys, you got to keep fresh because you do have to get these guys starts every once in a while. So he's got that. So because he's a rookie manager and we didn't really see much of him in a spring training 1.0 or 2.0, we don't know if this is something that is his MO. Is he a guy that likes to have a set lineup? Is he a guy that is going to move guys around? Or is he just looking for something to stick right now? And it could be that when you've lost 6 in a row and you're 2-9 to start the year. Or is this just a byproduct of the roster? I mean, if he gets a roster that's more that's got a lot more guys that are hitting on it, does he stick with some stability in there? Mm-hmm. So we don't really know that out of Derek Shelton at this point. But the stat I was reading earlier, I believe it was as of last night, about those top 4 hitters not doing a whole lot on this road trip. So they move Evans up to the 2-hole today, and he comes through with 3 hits. Phillip Evans with a big game. But I go back to what you were saying, the guys that are typically in that top 4. I mean, you look at what I threw out there as an outlier almost, because Evans was thrown in there and kind of skews a number. They need more from Frazier. They need more from a guy like Josh Bell, for instance. Reynolds is off to a slow start. And with Polanco, you have to wonder how much of this is a lingering effect of coronavirus. It affects everybody differently. Right. We do know he had it. And we do know that he very badly wants to play after really having a lost season in 2019 after the bad injury at the end of 2018. So is he pressing because he wants to get back out there? Is he 100%? And about the other guys, did they get the time to ramp up that they needed coming into this season? I think we're going to see a lot of stories and hear a lot of stories about, come November, December, guys saying, well, I really didn't feel prepared, if we're being honest, or going into spring training next year, they'll say, well, I wasn't healthy. I had this injury, but we were playing 60 games. So it is what it is. And you're seeing that with the pitching, having all the injuries in baseball. And I don't know if these hitters are as prepared as maybe they thought they were going to be. Looking at the exhibitions, I thought they were in good shape offensively coming into this year, but the stats do bear out a different story.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, the stats are bearing out some historically poor starts to a season in terms of batting average, in terms of OPS, in terms of really anything that's of any consequence for an offense. The Pirates have been pretty putrid to this point. I do have a tweet here from @Dr. Hulad, John Smith there on Twitter. Thank God the season is short. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there a little bit, despite hosting a post-game show. It's a great opportunity, but yeah, I'm kind of with you there, because this is a little bit more of a grind, even though it's a reduced schedule, because I look at the schedule to plan these things out, and you see, man, there's no day off. When am I off? It is game day after day after day, with maybe one break in the middle of the week. Major League Baseball teams are used to playing several times a week, but not this often.
Well, unless you're the Cardinals or the Marlins right now.
Right. Well, yes, right. And we'll get to that maybe in a moment, because they haven't played in a while, and who knows when they're going to play, which maybe makes this all irrelevant. But the Pirates are playing. They've been one of the teams, I guess, fortunate for them and me, they've been one of the teams that keeps on playing. Come hell or high water, they're getting these games in, even when there's weather delays and drones trying to take over the field. But they're not winning too many of them. You mentioned 2-9 on the season, 3 runs today. The offense has been really, really, really struggling, to say the least. There's really no rotation to speak of, and the bullpen has been a big problem. And even when the offense does hit, the numbers are skewed, because a lot of the time it's late in games when they're well out of it, or it's one guy with a 3-hit performance and everybody else has 1 or 0. So he kind of picks up the weight of things. But yeah, this does bring up the question then too, and I talked about this on a past post-game show, not so much tinkering the lineup, and I do want to ask this before we get to 3 up, 3 down, not so much tinkering the lineup, but is there a point for you? Because there's a reduced schedule. Some had the thoughts of grandeur that, okay, 60 games, some team's going to surprise. There's an expanded playoffs. Maybe they could do it if Reynolds can have another all-star season in his sophomore campaign. Bell could somehow jack a few more home runs than normal in his pace. Frazier could do the same, and they could somehow surprise. Does not appear to be the case to this point, and you can't afford to lose any more games. The situation of losing 1 is like losing 3 or 4 in a regular schedule. So when for you,
and here they've lost 6.
Right, yeah. More. They've lost more in a row than some teams have even played overall, as amazing as that sounds. So when for you do you actually just scrap it and just play the kids? I understand you want to get these guys in. I'm not saying not play these all-stars at all, but is there a focus at some point for you, maybe in a week or so, where you're saying, we don't have that many more games left in this season. There's not going to be playoffs. It is a rebuilding team and a rebuilding year. We actually maybe need to just focus on the future and kind of throw the white flag on even really trying this year? To get what my drift there?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think there definitely is a time where you have to look at some of these pieces that Ben Cherington has inherited and figure out who's worth keeping, who do we need to move on from, and who needs to be getting these at-bats in this season. Eric Gonzalez, I think, is a quintessential guy in that category, and he came through with 3 hits today. Had a pretty good series, to be quite honest, and he's someone that I personally haven't been sold on for his entire tenure as a Pirate. Decent defender, but I don't think he's the defender that a lot of people have him made out to be. We get a little offense from him today. So how does that play out? Because he's someone that's definitely fighting for his spot in a kind of crowded infield mix. We've got Kevin Kramer, who's not playing this year, but Newman, who didn't play today. He's got shortstop kind of locked down. You got Adam Frazier in there. Cole Tucker's getting reps in the outfield, but ideally, do you make him an infielder? That's another question mark, And I think that's why we're seeing so much of Tucker, because where does he fit into this franchise's plans? He's a first rounder, but remember, he's a first rounder under a different regime. So if
they threw him in the outfield in a summer camp game.
Well, they threw him. He started in center field last night, and misplayed a ball that allowed 2 runs to come in. So
he can't hit.
It seems like we're already there, Mike. The level of letting them play. I think Ke'Bryan Hayes would be on this team if it weren't for the fact that he was also sidelined with COVID-19. I think at some point, we could see him figure into the mix. Beyond that, I don't know who you really get a look at. O'Neal Cruz at some point. And again, the positions that seem to be the most crowded are those middle infield spots. You're looking for places to get bats into the lineup in a year where we have an extra offensive position to do that. So I definitely think they're already there. I definitely think there are probably moves being made or discussed that get different guys into the lineup and different bats into the lineup, and at least we'll give this management, this front office team, a look at what they've got, because they really haven't had a lot of that since this new regime took over.
Yeah, and I do think seeing more of that could be seeing more of Stallings at catcher. Maybe he's a guy who really cannot hit, but he's so great defensively. He has so much hype around him defensively, something that's not often brought up. He is the son of former Pitt head coach for the basketball team there, Kevin Stallings, who probably doesn't catch much favor with most Pittsburgh fans. However, I could see maybe seeing more of him and just maybe saying, okay, you don't have much of an impressive career in terms of a hitter or even in minor league ball, but we're going to give you most of a week to just scrap away. And if your average is 100 something, well, that's no different than Reynolds, Bell, and Frazier. So what's the
right.
So in seeing more of those guys, maybe even seeing more of Asuna, but these mainstays that you imagine you want to build around in Bell, Reynolds, Frazier, and even Polanco, even though he's been around longer. They got to do more. I don't even know if you're getting to a point soon, even in a reduced schedule, where you need to send a message, just a shot across the bow as a manager, and just flat out sit Bell down or flat out sit Polanco down, even though he's played less games, and just say, you're just literally not playing today because you flat out are not getting on base. And it's been a while. And Bell seems like he's trying to swing for the fences every at bat, which is leading to his miserable average. It's leading to a lack of power. It's leading to a lot of strikeouts. And in a reduced schedule, it's going to be more eye-popping than normal. Again, speaking with Eric Little here, play-by-play and radio host in West Virginia and former play-by-play man for the Augusta Green Jackets in minor league baseball. We do actually have some chatters now, but before I get to that, we are going to do the fun little segment here on the Pirates Postgame Show on this Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and that is 3 Up, 3 Down. And to remind you, we're doing 3 Up, 3 Down in another game the Pirates lose. They are 2-9 on the season as they're getting these games in, unlike some other teams we mentioned here. The Pirates losing this one 7-3 to Minnesota, 3 runs, 9 hits, 2 errors, 7 runs, 8 hits for the Twins. So, Eric, I'm going to give you the floor here and kind of scrape away anything that you know, to help you out if need be. But what would be your 3 Up, 3 Down? We mentioned a lot of it, so certainly you can repeat. But 3 Up, 3 Down for another Pirates loss.
Again, I'm going to go with a guy we haven't brought up yet. In his second appearance, I like Sam Howard. I like what he brought on Sunday afternoon. He came in his first game of the season, his first time up with the Pirates. Faces Anthony Rizzo. He's not afraid to go right at Rizzo, and he comes in today against the heart of that Minnesota order in 2/3 of an innings. In 2/3 of an inning, gives up a hit. One of his inherited runners scores. Reynolds throws out the guy at the plate to prevent a second inherited run from scoring, but he gets a big strikeout, and he gets the Pirates out of that inning in the 4th after Musgrove had put him in a bad spot, leaving with the bases loaded. I like Howard's approach. You like a guy out of the bullpen, especially from the left side, that comes in, throws strikes. He's not afraid to go at hitters. And that's something that you would think would be an easy thing to do, but too often is lacking. That pitcher that's not afraid to go right at somebody, especially when you're coming in from the bullpen. You've got to throw strikes and you've got to be fearless. And I think he's a guy that could figure in situations that are later than the 4th inning, of what was, I believe, a 5-run game at that point. Beyond that, let's go ahead and mention Eric Gonzalez because, again, 3 hits today, that's nothing to shake a stick at for a team that's not hitting right now. And I know he plays a position that's crowded. He's got a pretty versatile glove. You can stick him in there at third base if you want. You can stick him at short or second. That's the kind of game that will earn you a start tomorrow night. 3 for 4 for Eric Gonzalez. So good for him. And I'm going to throw Brian Reynolds out there because the ball that he hit hard. He hit on the screws. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that when you're making solid contact, even if the numbers aren't there, eventually they will be. That ball was hit on the screws, and if it's hit maybe 2 to 3 feet to the left, it's a 400-plus foot home run. As it is, he hit off the 21 or 24-foot high fence, and it ricochets around for a triple. But it's a slower bloom than what we'd like to see out of Brian Reynolds. And definitely it's slower than what this team needs to see. But if he can continue to hit the ball that hard and find gaps and find areas to get on base like that, I think he'll hit. So if you're hitting on the screws, I think that's a good sign that better things are to come. So those are my 3 up.
Yeah, and I think that was also something that was not – it's happening a little bit more now, which is maybe a bright spot, maybe a reason for optimism for some of these key contributors to hit more, because earlier in the season, the first week and a half, Bell was striking out every other at bat. Reynolds was barely making any contact. These balls were hit mostly into the infield. They were having bad at bats, not only not hitting and not only not getting on. Now they're still not really getting on that much,
No.
but they're having better at bats, and they're at least making these pitchers work. You're seeing more pitches thrown. I mean, even the rare hits. You see Cole Tucker the other day, opening up a game, it's the first pitch. And yes, you're not going to be upset about getting on or hitting a home run off the first pitch. But for a team like this, I would almost be getting close to telling these guys, take the first pitch unless it's a fastball down the middle of 95. Like, I would need to see pitchers.
And Tucker's approach last night was jumping all over.
Right.
Because the next to bat, he came up 20 minutes later and swung at the first pitch and grounded out the third.
Right.
So, he came in.
It's not a good approach despite the homer. Yeah.
He came in with a clear game plan last night. He was expecting fastball, center cut, from the jump. But I'm going to do some ultimate spin here on this. They left 10 on the bases today, and though they were 3 of 12 with runners in scoring position, you can't leave guys on the bases if you don't get them there in the first place. Now, if that's not spin, I don't know what is. That is high level. That's high-level lipstick painting on a pig. But we were talking about base runners,
right?
And you're not wrong. You can't bring guys home if you don't get them on base. And while it's not ideal to leave 10 men on the bases, I think anything above 8 or 9 there is a little egregious in that category and not conducive to winning baseball. But
yeah,
you're getting guys on. That's step one.
I think you sound like Derek Shelton a little bit in his post-game Zoom sessions that I do miss to host this post-game show. But when I do catch him, yeah, that's he's putting some lipstick on some pigs and trying to say, hey, these guys are trying. Hey, wouldn't you expect much from this year? Hey, it's first year for me. Hey,
right.
I mean, and you do have to give that leeway because this is a new regime. Charrington being there, Shelton being a rookie manager. These are young players. We mentioned that despite what Reynolds did last year, where he was setting some history actually for a Pirates rookie with all those doubles, you can't expect that every season. And that was more of an anomaly. Nobody would have expected it coming into last year. What he did, what Newman did, even what Bell did in the first half of last year, although it's been now about a full year of a slump for Bell in terms of the power. So these are still young players. It's a rookie manager, and it's still a young and new front office. So you do have to give some time. And in Charrington's ring with the Red Sox does mean nothing for what he's going to be doing in Pittsburgh. So you have to see how he deals with this, because he's not going to have the benefit of saying, like I'm saying, well, I don't want to play these guys because they're not hitting and they're my stars. So in the offseason, we're going to send a shot across the bow and we're going to go sign someone for big contract and try to switch this around. He's not going to be able to have that luxury here with Pittsburgh. So we will see what happens. That was the 3 up, and I think those definitely were the clear 3 up for a game. The Pirates lose 7-3 and leave all those men on base, as we mentioned, including 2 errors on the day for the team defensively. But what do you have for me for 3 down? And that's You probably could give me 9 down if you wanted to, but we're going to try to hold this to 3 still.
I'm going to start with the dude that flew the drone over Target Field. That game was taking an interminably long amount of time anyway.
Right.
we didn't need that 5 to 10 minute stoppage. Amusing as it might have briefly been.
Were you nervous about the curse? Were you thinking you're gonna get jacked out of another post-game show appearance here because something was gonna happen at the stadium with a drone and he would bring a virus in, or somehow we get this game canceled?
I got the telekinetic vibe from you somehow that if this game ended at 9:00, you and I would be talking baseball at 9:00 tonight.
Right, I was getting this in today for sure. I had to do it
somehow. I kind of felt like that was happening today.
Yeah.
So I knew we were going to eventually talk baseball, but that was a game that did not need to take any longer than it was already taking. It was mildly amusing at first, but no, that guy definitely gets the thumbs down.
Yeah.
I hate to dump on Gregory Polanco, especially when we know that his health is a question mark, and not just COVID. It is his arm, is his throwing arm back to where we were used to seeing it in 2018 and before, because I would argue that in that time in his career up to then, he definitely had the best throwing arm on the team, and he had, well, Starling Marte was on the team then, but he was one of the better throwing arms on the team, and he was probably in the top quarter of all outfielders in baseball. And then when we saw him in that little bit of time last year, it definitely was not up to par last year. And as he built up that strength, will he ever build up that strength? Will he ever be that outfielder offensively and defensively that we were used to seeing from him early in his career? There are starting to become some of those legitimate questions now. So Polanco is the guy there. And for my third, where am I going to go here? Is it too easy to go Josh Bell again? I mean, this is a guy that
I think you can, because I'm going to segue to that in a minute here with a question I see. So you can add Bell in.
This is a guy, though, that has the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Right.
And and it's not just baseball this season with what's going on in the world. You feel like he's being asked to speak out about some world issues, or he's taking it upon himself to take on that role as being one of the more prominent players on this team that's kind of in transition now. This is a franchise that really doesn't have a face like they did for a long time with Andrew McCutchen. And then after he left, is it Marte? Is it Bell? This is the part of his career where Bell, you look to him to be that face of the franchise. And on top of that, there are greater things going on in the world that he's compelled to chime in on. And he's done so, and he's done very well in doing so. But that takes a lot of pressure on you elsewhere, and I think that puts pressure on you to succeed on the field, and he's not getting the results early on. I don't know if this is a byproduct of adjusting to being a designated hitter so often. He likes to play the field, as many guys do. There are a lot of guys that like that involvement of being out there defensively rather than sitting around a dugout or hanging out in a tunnel and taking a bunch of hacks in a cage just to, get 4 to 5 at bats a night. That's definitely a new thing for Bell to be doing, or any of these Pirates to be doing on a regular basis. And I know Bell's not the primary guy. Derek Shelton's rotated that around, but he's getting a lot of those reps. So I don't know if it's a comfort thing. I don't know if it's a pressure thing, or if it's just, a slump that might be going back to the second half of last season in terms of where his power numbers, his production numbers were. But either way, you got to start somewhere, and 0 for 5 is not the place to do it. Of those 10 guys left on base, he left 5. And when you lose a game like this, 7-3, where they put up a little fight late, and they had chances today. There was a ball that John Ryan Murphy hit with 2 guys on about 405 feet to dead center field. It's caught. And if that ball leaves the yard, it's a 3-run game in like the 6th inning. It's a different ball game in the later stages. But they need Bell to drive in those guys. They need him to be that run producer. And I know it's a lot to ask. He's got sturdy shoulders, and he's going to need to be that guy if this team is going to get out of this funk that they're in right now, much less move up the division standings.
And I do think that while it's fair to group in Bell, Reynolds, Frazier, and Polanco as those main stars, the future of this franchise per se, if they're all able to stay aboard as a collective group that are struggling offensively, Bell has the most pressure on him by far for everything you mentioned in terms of the social issues and him being an African-American all-star in Major League Baseball, which there's not many of them, and certainly a face of this Pirate franchise now with Marte long gone, and Bell probably the name that most casual fans would know from this team now. I would probably say Bell would get said the most often, maybe just out of the youth of the others, or the name is easy to say, or he's hitting more home runs. But either way, he does have that pressure. And what was brought up on the chat there from Pittsburgh Sports All Time, that's his name, so I don't know who this really is, but regardless, in my opinion, Bell is trying to hit a home run too much, and I think it is because he is trying to impress other teams in his contract year. Any thoughts? So, Eric, we have a conspiracy theorist right now in the chat who basically is saying that Bell's mind is already elsewhere, and if that is the case, he's doing himself a grave injustice because he's losing money by the day. He's not hitting for power, 1 homer, 2 RBIs, 6 runs on the season. He entered the game, and I didn't calculate where he is now, but it would be lesser, at 278 at a slug. His slug was 278. This is a guy that if he wants to be, if he thinks he's going to get money, it's probably maybe going to be as a DH in the American League if it's not in Pittsburgh, because he's not that great defensively. But I don't know how anyone's given him a major contract off of what he's doing so far. So if that is the case, he's really doing himself an injustice. But any credence do you think Bell pressing to already having his mind elsewhere?
I think you slack off if you're a malcontent and you want to get fired at Jackson Hewitt. I don't know if you slack off or if you lose focus with your mind elsewhere in terms of a second baseball destination. We've already talked about the other things going on right now. The fact that he, especially with Marte gone, with he gone and McCutchen gone, he really is that veteran position player in the clubhouse. So he sees that, he feels that, and with the societal things that have gone on, there's already enough pressure on him in different areas. So I don't know that he's looking elsewhere. He might be looking elsewhere, but I don't know that that's a contributing factor to why things aren't going well. Because again, typically in a contract year, you want to go gangbusters, and you want to prove that you want someone to overpay you. In that contract season, you want to go all out 100% of the time, and not that he's not going all out. He's not getting the results right now, though. So I don't know that. I don't know that he's not going to wind up elsewhere. That remains to be seen. But again, if you're the Pirates, you look at this and someone will pay Josh Bell the money. That part I'm not right. I don't doubt that. Someone will pay Josh Bell the money because of what he's already done in his career. Where it might be seen as far as if he's costing himself money now, I think that's if he's costing himself an offer from the Pirates, because the Pirates are a team that they don't have the pockets that some of these other teams have. And that's well documented. That's well known. So their decision making is going to have to be precise and have to be sound. And if they even have an iota of an ounce of doubt as to whether or not Bell is a guy you can invest in long term, then they'll probably elect to move on from him. But I don't envy Ben Cherington, because he's got a decision coming up on Bell. He's got a roster that doesn't have quite enough to compete long term right now, and he's got trade chips that aren't gaining value. If anything,
that's also another problem. There's going to be a trade deadline, and if you're thinking you're playing the kids and Bell is giving the signs that maybe he's going to walk, or you don't want to bring him back because this is now a full calendar year of a slump, his trade value is greatly diminishing, especially if he can't get it done as a DH, because now this is actually a benefit in terms of trying to trade him. Normally, you'd have a player like him, kind of like what Adam Dunn was for so many years in the National League, where they scream DH, but you can't showcase them as a DH because you don't have the ability to play DH outside of American League. The Pirates can showcase him to American League teams and say, this is him as our DH, but they can't even.
Or other National League teams now, because.
That probably is a rule that's going to stay. True. That's probably a rule that's going to stay.
And if it doesn't for this year, you could rent a National League team is in a position to rent a hitter, to rent a bat. So
for this year.
So definitely you want to showcase the bat. And we've not mentioned the fact that he is very definitely working on his defense right now. You can see that the throwing motion's changed for Bell. He still doesn't quite have the confidence in that throwing motion, because I would argue that by not making the throw to second base in Monday night's game against the Brewers, that was a contributing factor to the loss in their home opener, the extra inning loss to Milwaukee in that game. By not being willing to go get that lead runner, and the next guy brings both of them home. Instead of runners on second and third, you'd have had runners on first and third, or you'd have been out of the game. So a lot of his focus right now is on the defensive end of his game, and has been on the defensive end of his game. So how much is that taking away from time that he would be using to figure out his offensive struggles? So
and it's not to tell a guy. It's not to tell a guy not to work on his defense, because obviously he wants to be versatile and be able to play first base. Even if you're going to be a career DH, you want to have the ability to play first base every now and then, with these teams working these lineups in all different ways every single day, it appears. But maybe he should also come to some realization that he's probably a career DH and work on the hitting, because that's also not there, and that's where the money is going to come from him. One more here from the chat, and we brought this up a little bit earlier, but someone says, I think Evans should be playing every day. Now, obviously, there was a solid day today, 3 for 5 today with a ribby. We talked about if you're going to play the kids. We talked about these stars struggling. Would you go as far as having Evans a guy that you'd be willing to play every day moving forward?
I think your bat is the best way to do talking, as far as wanting to get yourself in the lineup, and 3 for 5 with a ribby. That'll do it. Phillip Evans has showed up. He's played everywhere he's been asked to play. We saw him play in the outfield on Sunday. He played third base today. He's a guy that they can work in as a designated hitter. So we'll see him continue to get bats. That's the easiest way to get your name penciled in that lineup, is to keep hitting. Like Eric Gonzalez, I think it's going to be hard for Derek Shelton when he sits down to fill out that lineup card tomorrow. It's going to be hard to not put those two guys in there because of the 3 hit days they had today. Yeah. So I look for both
even
those
if
guys to be in there.
Even if it means sitting one of your stars, because it's going to be hard to figure. If you want to play Evans every day, it's going to be hard to figure out where, in terms of what position will be his for the next 40 plus games. But maybe that could be substantiated for the next week by playing some of those stars a little bit less and sending that message. But we will see here. Looking ahead, the Pirates have the Twins for a couple more, and then they have the Tigers, who certainly aren't looking to contend coming into this season, but we'll see what happens. Some more interleague games here coming up. What do you expect from the stretch moving forward, the remainder of this series against Minnesota, the series against the Tigers? You could maybe say once they get to Detroit, those could be winnable games, because they do at some point want to add some wins while you're seeing the rest of this team go. But we also mentioned how the lineup is, you wake up every morning and you have no idea who's going to be in this lineup. We need to look, and you need to see what the Pirates announce on Twitter, basically, because it could be something different every single day. But what do you expect moving forward here with the rest of this series and the next series coming up?
Offensively, I think you're going to see a team that's going to put it together for the rest of the week, to be quite honest. Remember, Detroit hasn't played in a few days because they were one of those teams that were collateral damage of a COVID outbreak with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Right.
So they're going to come in with a lot of pitchers that are going to have more rust than rest. And there's an opportunity there to jump on the Tigers. Looking at these next 2 games, again, I think there are enough guys that are starting to hit. And enough signs of life from some of the guys we mentioned earlier, looking at Brian Reynolds, that I think there will be some offense in the next couple of days. It's not going to be a completely moribund unit the rest of the week. But I look at starting pitching the next 2 nights. Trevor Williams goes tomorrow night. He's a guy that hasn't really put together. He's put together flashes this season in his starts, but he's not really been consistent over the course of either of those 2 starts. And then on Thursday afternoon, we'll get a look at JT Brubaker. And I really, really like that we're going to see Brubaker get a start in place of Mitch Keller. He's thrown twice in relief, multiple innings, and he's looked good. And he's displayed good stuff in those outings, the kind of stuff from a starter. And he made hay last year as a minor leaguer out of the starting rotation. So he was heralded that way. It's a role he's comfortable in. The bullpen was not a role he was comfortable in, but he came in and he looked good in those 2 appearances. Problem with Brubaker is he's a guy that hasn't thrown more than 3 to 4 innings or more than 3 innings this season. So then you get into that scenario where you're looking for somebody else to come in and pick up some length possibly on Thursday afternoon. So they need 6, no question, out of Trevor Williams tomorrow night.
And that is a
Bottom
tall
line.
task because we haven't seen it. That's a tall task. We haven't seen it. You were going to maybe think you could see it from Musgrove today. You don't see it from Musgrove. You actually get less from Musgrove. Trevor Williams with Randy Dobnak. That's going to be an interesting situation. Both teams kind of middle of the road starters. We'll see though, because Trevor Williams is certainly going to be asked to do a lot more than Randy will for the Twins. And
Dobnak's Randy Dobnak's have a lot of pressure on himself. He's a Western Pennsylvania guy.
Right.
A Pirates fan growing up. It's got to be somewhat bittersweet for him, you'd think, to be pitching at PNC Park during COVID, because he gets that homecoming. He gets that
no fans, no friends.
Right. He gets that. You dreamed about it forever, but it's not quite going to be what you dreamed of. But still, he's pitching at PNC Park, and that's not for nothing. A fairly local guy, so that'll be kind of cool to see press. But again, tomorrow night, they must get 6 out of Trevor Williams, because you can't expect JT Brubaker to go all that long. Effective as he's been, he's not built up and stretched out to go all that long on Thursday. So you really need a solid effort out of Williams to save that bullpen as much as possible if you want any hope at salvaging a split in the series. But first things first, they need a W, and it's going to start with a guy that can come on and be that stopper out of this rotation. We thought it might be Holland on Sunday, thought it might be Musgrove today, and it wasn't either one of those guys.
Yeah, and Trevor Williams looking to bounce back off a pretty so previous start. He's definitely going to be the guy to rely on. If it can't be Musgrove, it's going to have to be Trevor Williams. He's going to have to bring more to Pittsburgh than just his Twitter account, which is a great follow, but he's going to have to do it on the mound.
Good dude. I mean,
he's a very, very nice guy. Absolutely.
Heart's in the right place with his charitable efforts and all that he's done with his family. And all-time good dude. But now it's time to pitch, because this team needs him to step up and make a big start tomorrow. And they need length, and they need effectiveness out of Trevor Williams tomorrow.
Yeah. The Pirates desperately need Trevor Williams to give them at least a quality start, regardless of whether they have to dig it out at the end or not. They need more from that rotation, and they need more from the offense to help out the rotation. They need more defensively. They need more of it all. We're going to give you more of these post-game shows as we go towards the rest of the season here. This was a Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on PSL. We will actually be preempted by the Penguins playoffs tomorrow night. So Trevor Williams is going to be doing it on the mound for Pittsburgh. He'll be facing off against a Western PA guy, a very, very young pitcher against Randy Dobnak. So we'll see what happens there if he presses and if Trevor can give you enough innings to make that a winnable game for Pittsburgh. But no post-game show tomorrow. There will be a post-game show for the Penguins as they try to get a lead now against Montreal in that series.
Pittsburgh will hear about what Trevor Williams does. They'll see what the Pens do tomorrow night.
Right.